All right, I've got a great show for you today. I have Jim Hoff from the Gateway Pundit with me to go over some of the biggest stories in the news. Jim, thank you so much for joining me again.
It's great to be with you, Stephen. Thank you.
So I wanted to start off. President Trump demonstrated a tremendous amount of courage going back to the exact location where the Secret Service completely fumbled, and he ends up getting shot in the head. Obviously, not shot enough for Democrats to be happy, but shot nonetheless. And he returns. And he starts off by saying, as I was saying, and the crowd laughs. He's such a great comedian, right? But did you see this as him showing the deep state, Democrats, voters, and the world that he will not be intimidated and that he will become president of the United States?
I thought it was a defining moment of our time, just to see this man, this legend, really, and certainly. He's larger than life at this point. When he came down the stairs in 2015 to announce his first run at the presidency, I mean, that was a spectacular moment. And his speech, a lot of us won't forget, when he's talking about building a wall and having Mexico pay for it. And a lot of us were hooked in at that point. I was. And then to see this saga go on and on, it's just... I think it's a privilege to live during this time and see this happening. This is certainly one of the greatest moments in American history. And yet the final chapter has not been written. I truly hope that it will turn out, the way of legends, and it will be one of the greatest stories of all time when Trump comes back and is put back in the White House, and he can correct all of this lawlessness by the left that they've infiltrated this country with, that they've just decimated this country with their policies and their hatred for America and the American people. So I agree with you, Stephen. It was a magnificent moment. It really touched me too. And I'm just going to throw this in because this guy has been persecuted more than any of us have ever seen someone go through what he's gone through. Obviously, there's a lot of people over the years who've been, we hear the horrible stories during wars and stuff when people are captured and tortured and persecuted. But what they've done to this man, the pressure they put on him, all of the lawsuits, all of the smears, all of the nasty things they've thrown at him. This guy who was such a stud, and all the women were throwing themselves at him for years, and now they're trying to pretend that he's a serial rapist, or a serial abuser. The disgusting things they've said about his family, the way they've treated his family. They've rummaged through his wife's underwear drawer. They've raided his home. They've spied on him. They've infiltrated his campaign. They infiltrated his administration. Then they get 70, 90 charges against the man, and he just keeps going. And for myself, at Gateway Pundit, Stephen, you may be aware, but we've been persecuted to some extent too with these lawfare cases. It's no fun. It's not a good time when these people come after you and they try to destroy you. And to ruin you. And we've had our name ruined also. If you even look at Wikipedia today, and I should never advertise, for people to look us up, but it's the most filthy entry they have on their whole website, what they've said about Gateway Pundit. All lies, I would argue. And I can't even counter it, So I know what it's like to be persecuted. Not even a tenth to the degree that Donald Trump has been persecuted. And I just admire him so much for what he's doing for this country. And I hope we have this glorious, happy ending come January when he's reinstalled as president.
Yeah, they need to rename it Sneakypedia, where, they can say whatever they want and then they lock the page, and you're not allowed to defend yourself or correct your record. But I agree. We're looking for a Grover Cleveland moment where Trump is president, things get so bad he has to come back and fulfill a second term. And I can't wait for him to say, as I was saying, as he becomes president, puts his hand on the Bible again so that we can move forward. You guys have, I would say there's not an outlet that has covered election integrity better than Gateway Pundit. You guys have shown courage, whether it's Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Georgia. And yet, 60% of Americans do not believe that our elections are free and fair anymore. We've got President Trump down in Georgia where they're trying to throw him in jail for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, the election committee admits that there are 500,000 ballots that are either missing or never existed. And we know he didn't lose by 500,000, right? So there's a lot of shenanigans going on. One of the big stories that you guys are going to be breaking are these military ballots that are being abused and brought in from overseas. What can you tell my listeners about that, Jim?
Well, this is such an interesting story. And we saw this in 2020. As you recall, there were, of course, all these battleground states. And in the last minute, they were all struggling to get their ballots through. In the middle of the night, they're bringing them in Michigan, the late night delivery of ballots in the vans that Democrats brought in the TCF Center. We saw in Georgia how they told people to go home, and then they reopened the counting center, and people went in there and continued to count these ballots. We saw in Michigan or in Wisconsin, the election. The liberal election official is taking a flash drive across town, and she forgets it and she has to go back, and all these crazy things that are happening in every swing state. Of course, Pennsylvania, Trump was ahead by over 700,000 votes on election night. And the next day I said to a friend, I'm like, well, they might steal a couple of these states, but they could never steal Pennsylvania. Trump's too far ahead. I mean, almost 1 million votes. But sure enough, they came back. They locked the doors. They wouldn't let Republicans in the counting rooms, and they continued to count till they found enough ballots, and then they called the race. And that was by Saturday when they gave the election to Donald Trump. It's absolutely disgusting what's happened to our elections. And one thing that we reported on at the time were what are called UOCAVA votes, Stephen. And these are the overseas ballots that come in. Historically, they've been military ballots and families of military members. And historically, a majority of those have been people in the military serving their country. And of course, they've gone Republican because for years now, Republicans have been the party that the military has supported. Well, in 2020, we saw these very suspect numbers come in Georgia, in Michigan, in Arizona, Wisconsin, where the military ballots came in and they were getting like 90% Joe Biden. And we saw that in Georgia. We saw in Arizona the same sort of numbers that were coming in. And so we've learned a lot about that since 2020. And what it is the UOCAVA votes today, they're no longer a majority military ballots. Today, they're a majority other ballots, like people who are overseas working. And these were the ballots that they were counting late at night in these different states. Isn't that interesting that they suddenly appeared and they brought into these counting rooms? And so now we found out a lot more about these UOCAVA votes. Democrats made a big announcement a couple months ago saying they're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into getting out the UOCAVA vote. And so it was kind of interesting. They're going to target Americans overseas. Now, what they said in their announcement, Stephen, was that there's 9 million of these voters overseas, and they're going to, get all of these new voters to vote Democrat. Well, the interesting thing about that is, from our numbers, we looked up on the government website, and we found that there was only about 4.8, 4.7, something like that, a million Americans that live overseas. And of that, only 2.8 million are eligible to vote. So Democrats are going after 9 million of these voters. And yet we found that in the government website says there's only 2.8 million that are eligible to vote. So right there, it raises a red flag. But then when you start looking at this, when these people sign up to vote, they just need an email address. They don't need an ID. They don't need a social security number. They don't even need to tell you which state they're in. They can put down basically any state they want, which of course they'll be putting down these battleground states. And so this is what the Democrats are doing. And we're raising the red flag on this. And we're shocked because we're like, is anybody paying attention to this? I did send our first report on this to JD Vance. I sent it to some other individuals. I sent it to Tucker Carlson, and Tucker said, you got to get this to the campaign. And so no one really has said much about this until this friend of mine who writes for me, Patty McMurray, she's the one who's been working on this story, and it's developing. It wasn't just just one story, but we're finding out more. But she went and she spoke with some people at a Lincoln Day dinner a couple of weeks ago. And so this the owner, founder of the Babylon Beats tweeted about it, and Elon Musk retweeted it last week. And then Donald Trump retweeted it yesterday saying, we got to watch this. So people are, important people are starting to understand that this is a huge threat. Because, of course, in the Battleground States, they only won by, 10,000 in Arizona, in Arizona and Georgia, around that amount, 10 to 20,000. Pennsylvania was a little bit more. Michigan was more, but it wasn't that many. And so if they're able to successfully, and I don't trust the Democrats at all. I don't trust our elections at all. But I don't trust the Democrats. I think they're a crime syndicate. The only reason they're going after these votes is because they know that they can cheat with them. And they announced early that this is what they're going to be doing, because we're going to see a flood of UOCAVA votes come in this season. Are Republicans doing anything about this, Stephen? I would tell you right now, no, nothing. We've followed up on that. However, we do have some stories coming up this week, and it's going to be pretty frightening what's happening. And we do have now, since our reporting, there's a case in Pennsylvania. 5 different congressmen are suing on these UOCAVA votes in Pennsylvania, so that's good. And we need cases in all of these battleground states, actually in every state, because there's no way that these are going to be secure votes. If you don't need a social security number, you don't need a driver's license or an ID to sign up for them. What is that all about? I have a partner who's from Philippines, and he tells me that in Philippines they shut down the country. You have one day to vote. It's a holiday, and everybody goes in and they get their finger marked purple. And we're talking 70 million people or whatever, and it works that way. But not in America. We have such insecure elections today that we're battling now in all these different areas to try to stop the fraud. And Democrats are finding clever new ways to cheat. And this UOCAVA issue, I believe, is going to be very important. We already know it's important. What I can tell you right now is, and this won't be published for a couple of days, our interview, I think. But anyway, we know already, we've heard from some clerks in one battleground state that they're getting a flood of these ballots coming in right now.
Yeah.
And so they're seeing enormous numbers of these UOCAVAs coming in. So what does that tell you, Stephen? Democrats have no appeal to anyone. Their policies stink. They can't get people out. They're dangerous policies. They're destroying this country. We've seen what they've done with the hurricane relief. We see what they've done with sending money to Ukraine and sending money to put illegal immigrants in hotels and giving them, EBT cards and so their policies stink and nobody likes it. They're losing all of their appeal. Obviously, even black voters who've been strong Democrats for decades now are starting to move back away from them. So what do? They have to rely on different means to get their ballots in. And I think, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, I think this is what they're doing. This is one of the ways that they cheat. And so it's just become so simple for them. And I blame the Republicans also for not putting up any resistance at all, as Democrats just run roughshod across this country, and especially with our elections, so that they can regain power and maintain power. It's really pretty horrible. So we're covering that story. I think it's a big story. And sorry for taking up so much time on that. It's absolutely shocking. Yeah.
The Federal Reserve has dropped interest rates, so you need to call my friends at American Financing today. With mortgage rates in the 4s, now is the perfect time to consolidate your debt and reduce your monthly expenses. A lot of us have been forced to use credit cards because of the ridiculous price increases at the grocery store, our electric bills, our power bills, and even childcare. That debt is really expensive, with credit card rates being insanely high. But with mortgage rates dropping, now is the time to wipe out that debt. American Financing is helping homeowners just like you save on average over $800 a month. And if you close soon, in the next 10 days, you might be able to delay up to 2 mortgage payments. You could use that towards paying off your debt. Now, there are no upfront fees, and you can save a lot of money. I want you to call American Financing today, and you can do that by calling 888-686-8030. Again, that's 888-686-8030. I'm also going to leave a link down below to their direct website.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but I'm sitting here thinking, okay, if I could fabricate 6.5 million overseas ballots and then choose what state I want to have them sent to, I can essentially make any swing state swing the way that I want it to. I think you guys are onto something. So thank you for bringing that to my viewers' attention. Another thing that you guys brought to viewers' attention was this CNN story saying that it would basically be a miracle for Kamala Harris to win the election because her favorability is so low. But on top of that, so many Americans believe that the United States of America is headed in the wrong direction. And this CNN analyst was basically saying, you need about 42% of the country to think you're going in the right direction in order to stay in power. And right now it's around 28%. What are some of the things that you think are agitating Americans that they believe, even as a Democrat, are leading us in the wrong direction? I know immigration and inflation are probably right at the top.
Right, absolutely. Immigration, inflation. I think the way they've handled this emergency has been atrocious. I have a friend who's down in North Carolina. She went down there yesterday. She's a doctor from the St. Louis area, and she's going to be helping the people out down there because they still aren't getting the assistance they need, certainly from the government. And we're learning, and people, the message on the street is, don't wait for the government to come rescue you. Because it's not happening. It's certainly not happening down in the Southeast, in North Carolina and Tennessee. You have to really take care of yourself and make sure that you have friends and family and assistants, and that's who's going to help you, not the government. They failed horribly and miserably. I think a lot of people, this doesn't get a lot of attention, but I know in We have a website now, Gateway Hispanic, Stephen. It's
Okay.
it's our new website, and it targets the Latino and Hispanic community in America, and also in South America. We were trying to put out a different message, because really the only media they can get is left-wing media, which is a shame, because a lot of these people are very conservative in their values. And I bring that up because I think issues like having these little porn books of children having sex in school libraries with pictures is totally disgusting. I think when people find that out, they're just appalled that that's going on. I think when they start talking about transitioning little children, even at an early age, and calling them different genders when they're 2 or 3 or 4, I think it's just so bizarre that I think that's also a huge turnoff to a lot of people in this culture. I think Democrats are going to run on abortion. They're lying about Republicans, and they're lying about Trump's stand on abortion and IVF fertilization. But I think they're trying to make that the topic of the year. I don't think that's going to work. But again, I don't know how worried they are right now. You'd think they'd be very desperate running someone like Kamala, who can't hold an interview. She did a pretty good job. I was impressed with her at the debate with Trump, because she just didn't cackle and talk word salads. She was very well prepared to talk, nonsense. It was nothingness, but she didn't sound crazy like she generally does. So, but they don't seem to be as panicked as you'd think they should be, with the way the direction the country's going.
Look at this. Let me put this up on the screen so that you can see it as well. You mentioned doing just an atrocious job on the handling of Hurricane Helene. The federal government is telling the American people there is no money to help you. FEMA is unprepared financially. We are not going to be able to help you. And then literally the next day, she announces $157 million to Lebanon, that she's concerned about meeting the needs of all civilians in Lebanon. I mean, this is such a slap in the face. Can you imagine being in North Carolina, your Starlink free internet from Elon Musk and Donald Trump finally opens up on your smartphone, and you realize that Kamala Harris has authorized $157 million, not to Lebanon, North Carolina, but to Lebanon, a country that, we have nothing to do with this war over there. What are your thoughts on her saying, no money for you? Yes, we're giving taxpayer money over to Lebanon.
Right. Well, actually, we know that the people get $750 here, right? The people who are suffering, if they can get online, if they can get to the website, and if they can get the money transferred over to a bank that may not exist at this point. They're getting the peanuts as Kamala's doing this. It's so tone deaf. It's really unbelievable. And it's to me, it's almost as if it's like when the regime takes over and has total control, they just mock the people. They just mock you with their power. And this is the sense I get from putting out messages like that. They really don't care about Americans, and they really don't care what you think. And they're just going to mock you and just say, oh, well, we're going to give this money to somebody else. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's a pretty dark way to look at this, but it's so appalling and so tone deaf. It's hard to believe that they don't understand what type of message this is sending to Americans.
Yeah. Final question. Outside of cheating, is there any way that Americans can beat Donald Trump? Everywhere he goes, he's filling stadiums, parks. He's going into places you would think he would not get anybody. And like New Jersey, the Bronx, he goes back to Butler, Pennsylvania. Boom, there's like 2 or 3 times as many people. I mean, the Trump organization or the Trump reelection campaign, they're not paying influencers $10,000 to do posts about them. Like they are just organically, this populist movement is growing and building. And yet the mainstream media continues to run cover that Kamala Harris is the best thing since Barack Obama, that she is distancing herself from Joe Biden, even though he's the best president. Like so many weird things. Outside of cheating, can they beat Donald Trump?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think you're absolutely right. It's really interesting, isn't it, to see Kamala, who was the most unpopular vice president in history. Now all of a sudden they're all gung-ho about her running for president. You know, we will see. I think this is again a historic time. I think Trump will have to win in enormous numbers. I see Kamala Harris. We might be surprised that she does better than Joe Biden, right? And you know, so Trump is going to have enormous turnout on election day. And I just pray to God that it will be Donald Trump who is our next president, because these Democrats have really they're very it's frightening what they've done to this country in the way they're taking away our rights and destroying our economy and of course destroying our borders. So God bless America and God bless Trump. I hope we have a happy ending here.
Yeah. One final thing that I just thought of is, you know, in 2020, the polling data showed that Donald Trump was neck and neck with Joe Biden, right? Of course, they covered up the Hunter Biden laptop story just, you know, right before the election. Intelligence agents lied to the American people. No accountability there, right? But the betting markets actually were betting that Joe Biden would win, right? And then the betting markets were were predicting that Kamala would win the debate against Donald Trump. That's debatable. But now Donald Trump is up 8 points. They are saying he is going to take the Electoral College. He is going to destroy Kamala Harris. It's really interesting. The polling data is really hard to get, but when Americans put up their money is betting on Donald J. Trump. Do you think that's significant?
No, I hope it is. Yeah, I think it is, Stephen. That's good to hear. So hopefully that will only increase over the next few weeks. We will see. There's still plenty of time left, and we have another Category 5 hurricane coming barreling into Florida. So a lot could happen between now and Election Day.
Yeah, I saw today that the Trump reelection campaign said between now and November 5th, Donald Trump has multiple events every single day. This is a man that is working like he wants to be president of the United States. This is a man who is working for the American people. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has maybe a handful of softball interviews lined up. It's just pathetic to see the difference between the two. Jim, if people want to follow you online, where's the best place that I can send them?
Yeah, the best place to go is thegatewaypundit.com. And okay. And we, of course, we're on social media across the spectrum, but that's our basis, thegatewaypundit.com. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, I will put a direct link to that down below. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all you do. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.